He wrapped his fingers around his pregnant wife's wrist in the middle of his promotion party, dragged her behind a marble pillar, and hissed that she was too plain to be seen with his coworkers. When she tried to show him the tiny ultrasound photo, the first picture of their baby, he slapped it out of her hand and shoved her so hard she hit the polished floor. 300 guests in that ballroom. Not one person helped her. His mistress watched from across the room, smiling. But here is what Daniel Hartwell did not know. The quiet wife he had just humiliated in front of everyone, the woman he called boring and worthless for 4 years, her real name was not Elise Hartwell. She was Elise Marie Kensington, secret billionaire, hidden CEO, the actual owner of the company where Daniel worked. Every promotion he bragged about, she had signed the approval. Every bonus he celebrated, her signature was on the check. And the security guard who watched him assault her, his body camera was already recording. Transition, this is not just a story about revenge. This is a story about a woman who hid her power to find true love, discovered she had married a monster, and had to choose between staying silent or risking everything to protect her unborn child. What happens next will show you that the most dangerous person in any room is not the one who screams the loudest. It is the one who stays quiet until the perfect moment to strike. If you have ever felt trapped, underestimated, or invisible, this story is for you. The sound of champagne glasses clinking filled the grand ballroom of the Charlotte Meridian Hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast warm golden light across 300 guests in designer suits and elegant dresses. Laughter echoed off marble walls. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and on the cold, polished floor, behind a marble pillar, Elise Hartwell lay curled around her stomach, protecting the life inside her that no one in this room knew existed. Her husband stood above her, his face twisted with rage. His fingers still tingled from shoving her. A small photograph fluttered down beside her face, a sonogram, their baby's first picture. Daniel Hartwell straightened his tie, the expensive one she did not recognize, and hissed through clenched teeth, "You always have to ruin everything." The music played on. Somewhere across the room, his mistress waited with a fresh glass of champagne. Colleagues pretended not to see what had happened behind the pillar. One woman glanced over, then quickly looked away. Elise pressed her palm against the cold marble. Her shoulder throbbed where she had hit the floor. Her wrist burned where Daniel had grabbed her. But worse than any physical pain was the realization crashing through her mind like a wave. No one was coming to help her. She was alone in a room full of people. 3 weeks earlier, Elise Marie Kensington, though no one at this party knew her by that name, had woken up believing her marriage could still be saved. She had cooked breakfast while her husband scrolled through his phone without acknowledging her presence. She had smiled when he barely grunted goodbye. She had told herself that successful men were often distant, that his promotion would ease the pressure, that love required patience. She had believed these lies because the alternative was too painful to face. That same morning, in the hidden basement office of their modest suburban home, Elise had signed documents worth $47 million. She had approved an acquisition that would create 2,000 new jobs. She had reviewed quarterly reports from 12 subsidiary companies, including Meridian Dynamics, where her husband worked as a senior account director. Daniel Hartwell had no idea that his wife was E.M. Kensington, the mysterious CEO behind Kensington Holdings. He had no idea that the quiet woman who made his coffee each morning controlled a Fortune 500 empire. He thought she was a former nonprofit worker living off a small inheritance from her dead parents. Elise had hidden her identity for 4 years because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her money. She had craved a normal life, a normal marriage, a family built on genuine connection rather than calculated interest. Now, lying on a ballroom floor, while her husband's colleagues stepped around her like she was spilled champagne, Elise understood the cost of that desperate hope. Her phone had buzzed that morning with a message preview she was not meant to see. A woman named Megan asking if Daniel would pack the red thing she liked for their conference trip. 3 whole nights together, the message had promised, followed by an emoji Elise could not unsee. She had told herself it was a misunderstanding, a work colleague, an inside joke, anything but the obvious truth. Denial had always been her specialty. The security guard appeared first. James Tucker, 52 years old, had worked hotel security for 2 decades. He had seen domestic disputes before, but something about this one made him quietly activate his body camera before pushing through the crowd. "Ma'am?" His voice was calm but firm. "Are you hurt? Should I call an ambulance?" Daniel materialized beside them, his public face already reconstructed, smooth, concerned, loving husband helping his clumsy wife. "She is fine." He reached for Elise's arm. "She had too much champagne. I will take her home and make sure she rests." Tucker did not move. "I was asking the lady, sir." For a moment, the 3 of them formed a frozen triangle. Daniel's smile flickered. Elise looked up at the security guard, at his steady eyes and the small blinking light on his chest she did not yet understand the significance of. "One," she swallowed. "I think I need to see a doctor." Daniel's grip tightened on her elbow. A warning, a threat disguised as support. "Honey, you are overreacting. Let me just get you home and—" "The lady said she needs a doctor." Tucker's voice hardened slightly. "I will call an ambulance, sir. Please step back." Other guests were watching now. The scene was becoming impossible to ignore. Daniel calculated quickly, weighing his reputation against the satisfaction of control. He released her arm. "Fine." He smoothed his jacket. "I will follow the ambulance and meet you at the hospital, sweetheart." His voice dripped with false tenderness. "We will get you checked out and then laugh about this tomorrow." Elise nodded weakly, unable to speak. As Tucker guided her toward the exit, she caught a glimpse of a woman in a tight red dress, watching from across the room. Megan Shaw, 28, beautiful, smiling. The sonogram photograph still lay on the ballroom floor. Elise had not been able to pick it up. Someone's heel had already creased it. In the ambulance, with with sirens wailing and a paramedic checking her vital signs, Elise felt the first cramp. Then another. Then a warm wetness, spreading between her legs, that made her cry out in terror. "Ma'am," the paramedic said urgently, "are you pregnant?" 8 weeks, her voice broke. "Please, please save my baby." The ambulance accelerated. Elise stared at the ceiling, feeling her carefully constructed life crumbling around her like a house built on sand. She had hidden her power to find true love. Instead, she had found a monster. And now that monster might cost her everything. The emergency room at Charlotte Memorial smelled like antiseptic and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across rows of plastic chairs filled with coughing strangers and anxious families. Elise sat alone in a curtained examination area, a thin hospital gown replacing her blood-stained dress. 3 hours she had waited. 3 hours of not knowing if her baby was alive or dead. 3 hours of watching medical staff rush past her curtain to attend to other emergencies while she pressed her hands against her stomach and whispered prayers to a God she was not sure she believed in anymore. Daniel had not come. She had called him twice from the ambulance. Both calls went to voicemail. She imagined him back at the party, accepting congratulations on his promotion, Megan's hand resting on his arm where his wife's hand should have been. When the ultrasound technician finally arrived, Elise could not stop shaking. The cold gel on her belly made her flinch. The probe moved slowly, searching, while she held her breath and waited for news that might destroy her. Then she heard it, a rapid whooshing sound, steady, strong, alive. "There's your baby's heartbeat." The technician smiled gently. "Looking good so far. The doctor will want to discuss some concerns, but the baby is hanging in there," Elise sobbed. Relief and grief tangled together until she could not tell which emotion was which. Her baby had survived. Her marriage had not. Doctor Helen Patterson arrived 20 minutes later. A calm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner. She pulled a chair close to Elise's bedside and spoke quietly. "Mrs. Hartwell, your baby is stable, but you have what we call a subchorionic hemorrhage. The fall caused partial separation of the placenta from the uterine wall. It is not uncommon, and many pregnancies continue normally after this type of injury. However, you are now considered high risk. Significant stress or additional physical trauma could cause miscarriage." Elise nodded, absorbing the words like blows. Dr. Patterson paused, then continued in a different tone. "I am required to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you feel safe at home?" The question hung in the air between them. Of course, Elise heard herself say the words automatically. "It was an accident. I lost my balance." Dr. Patterson did not look away. "In 22 years of obstetric practice, I have never seen an accident leave a handprint bruise on a pregnant woman's upper arm." Elise glanced down at her arm. The purple marks were clearly visible now, 4 fingers and a thumb perfectly preserved in her flesh. She opened her mouth to explain, to justify, to protect the man who had just endangered her child. The lies rose up, familiar and practiced. But something stopped her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the sound of her baby's heartbeat still echoing in her memory. Maybe it was the simple fact that someone had finally asked the question no one else seemed willing to ask. "I do not know," her voice cracked. "I do not know if I am safe." Dr. Patterson reached out and gently took her hand. "Then let us figure that out together. I am going to give you 2 cards. One is mine. Call me anytime, day or night, if you have concerns about the pregnancy. The other is a domestic violence hotline. Calling does not mean you are weak. It means you are smart enough to explore your options." Elise took the cards with trembling fingers. "Thank you." After Dr. Patterson left, a night nurse named Rosa Martinez brought Elise water and an extra blanket. Rosa was 55 years old, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much. She sat on the edge of Elise's bed without asking permission. "First time he hit you?" Elise flinched. "He did not hit me. He pushed." Rosa nodded slowly, as if she had heard this distinction 1,000 times before. "Honey, I have worked this ward for 30 years. I have seen that look on more faces than I can count. The look that says my life was not supposed to turn out this way." Elise felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. "You want to know the hardest part?" Rosa continued. "It is not leaving. It is admitting to yourself that you need to. Everything else comes after that first admission." The words settled into Elise like stones dropped into still water. Rosa patted her hand and stood. "Your husband called the nurses' station, said he got held up at work, but he is on his way now. Should I tell him which room you are in?" Elise hesitated. A tiny voice inside her whispered, "Run." But where would she go? Back to the home she shared with Daniel? To a hotel alone, 8 weeks pregnant and bleeding? To her sister Grace in Boston, dragging her family into this mess? She thought about the basement office, about Vivian waiting for her calls, about the empire she had built and hidden and nearly forgotten in her desperate pursuit of normal love. She thought about the $47 million acquisition she had approved that morning, signed with the name E.M. Kensington, while upstairs, her husband did not even notice she existed. Yes, Elise heard herself say. Tell him room 412. Rose's expression flickered with something like disappointment, but she nodded without judgment. If you need anything tonight, you press that call button. I am here until 7. Daniel arrived 40 minutes later with a bouquet of roses and a face arranged in perfect contrition. His performance was flawless. The worried husband rushing to his injured wife's side, gathering her hands in his, pressing apologetic kisses to her forehead, while nurses watched and approved. Baby, I am so sorry. His voice trembled convincingly. I do not know what came over me. The stress of the promotion, all those people watching, I just snapped. I have never done anything like that before, and I swear to you, I will never do it again. Please, let me take you home and take care of you. Elise looked at his handsome face, his earnest eyes. The roses that probably cost more than the gas station gift card he had given her for Christmas. She thought about the text message from Megan, about the years of small cruelties she had excused, about the sonogram photo lying crumpled on a ballroom floor. She thought about the baby growing inside her, the heartbeat she had heard, the future she had dreamed of. And she chose the dream over the evidence. Okay, she whispered the word like a surrender. Take me home. In that moment, lying in a hospital bed, agreeing to return to the man who had just endangered her child, Elise Hartwell made the same choice millions of women make every year. She was not stupid, she was not weak, she was simply human, and humans have an infinite capacity to hope for change that will never come. She would later learn that domestic violence victims return to their abusers an average of 7 times before leaving for good. She would learn that the cycle of abuse, tension, explosion, and reconciliation is designed specifically to trap people exactly like her. But that night, holding her husband's roses, breathing in his cologne, letting him help her into a wheelchair, Elise knew only that she was tired and scared and desperate to believe that love could still save them. It could not. 2 weeks passed in a haze of false reconciliation. Daniel became the husband Elise had always wanted him to be. He brought her breakfast in bed, careful arrangements of fruit and toast that he had never bothered with before. He rubbed her feet while they watched television. He asked about the baby, using words like we and our future and our family. He even accompanied her to a prenatal appointment, sitting in the waiting room with other expectant fathers, playing the role so convincingly that Elise almost forgot it was a performance. Almost. The text messages from Megan had stopped appearing on his phone screen, but Elise noticed he had changed his passcode. She noticed he took calls in other rooms now, speaking in low murmurs she could not quite hear. She noticed the way his eyes flickered to his device every few minutes, the way his thumb moved automatically to check notifications whenever he thought she was not watching. But she said nothing. She wanted so badly to believe that the nightmare at the party had been an aberration, a single moment of madness that would never repeat. Meanwhile, her secret life demanded attention she could not give. Vivian Cross called 3 times a day from the secure line, her voice increasingly worried. Elise, the Singapore deal is falling apart. James Morrison is making moves against your board seat. The shareholders are asking questions about why E.M. Kensington has been invisible for 6 weeks. Elise sat in her basement office, the one Daniel thought was just a storage room with a lock, and tried to focus on documents that required her full attention. Handle it, Vivian. I need more time. Time for what? Vivian's voice sharpened with uncharacteristic frustration. To play house with a man who put you in the hospital? Vivian had worked for the Kensington family for 30 years. She had held Elise at her parents' funeral. She had watched Elise build her father's empire into something even greater while hiding from the world that would judge her for being young and female and grieving. She had also run background checks on Daniel Hartwell before the wedding, checks that Elise had refused to read. He is trying. Elise heard the weakness in her own voice. People can change. The silence on the line spoke louder than words. Finally, Vivian said, I pulled his latest expense reports from Meridian. He bought a $4,200 watch on your joint credit card last week. Your reformed husband is celebrating his good behavior by spending your money on himself. Elise closed her eyes. Maybe it was a gift for the baby. It was engraved with his initials, Vivian replied flatly. Try again. The conversation ended with Vivian promising to hold off the bored vultures for another week and Elise promising to actually read the Morrison situation report. Both of them knew only one promise would be kept. That evening, Elise was sorting through mail when she found it. A letter from Henderson Collections addressed to Daniel Hartwell, marked urgent and final notice. It had been opened already, then stuffed carelessly back into its envelope. Inside, she found a statement that made her blood run cold. Her husband owed $347,000 to a company she had never heard of. The letter referenced a debt restructuring agreement he had apparently violated, multiple missed payments, and a warning about consequences that went beyond typical collection agency threats. This was not credit card debt. This was not a car loan. This language suggested something far more dangerous. Elise began searching. In Daniel's gym bag, she found a second phone she did not know existed. In his desk drawer, she found credit card statements for accounts in both their names that she had never opened. In his filing cabinet, she found loan documents with her signature forged on the co-signer line. He had been stealing from her for years, not from the Kensington fortune, which he did not know existed, but from the modest accounts he thought represented her entire worth. He had forged her name. He had hidden debts. He had gambled away money that was supposed to be their future. And the people he owed were not the kind who took you to court when you did not pay. Elise sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of her husband's betrayal, and for the first time since the hospital, she let herself feel the full weight of her situation. She was pregnant by a man who had assaulted her in public. She was legally tied to a man who had committed fraud in her name. She was in danger from people who did not care about divorce proceedings or restraining orders. And the irony burned like acid. She controlled enough money to buy this entire city, and she had never felt more trapped in her life. Her phone buzzed. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Working late. Do not wait up. Love you. Elise stared at the message. She thought about the second phone in his gym bag. She thought about Megan Shaw and the conference trip and the red thing. She thought about the sonogram photo she had never retrieved from that ballroom floor. Then she did something she had not done in 4 years of marriage. She called her sister. Grace answered on the second ring. Elise, is everything okay? No. The word came out broken. Nothing is okay. I need help. On the other end of the line, Grace Kensington Rhodes went very quiet. Then she said the words Elise needed to hear. Tell me everything. And then we are going to fix this. For the next 2 hours, Elise talked. She told Grace about the party, the hospital, the fake reconciliation. She told her about the debt, the forged signatures, the second phone. She told her about years of small cruelties she had dismissed, red flags she had ignored, warning signs she had explained away. She did not tell Grace about the Kensington fortune. That secret was not hers to share, not even with family. But she told her enough. By the time Daniel came home, at 2 a.m, smelling like whiskey and perfume, Elise was asleep in their bed with dried tears on her cheeks and a plan beginning to form in her mind. The cage door had opened a crack. Now, she just had to find the courage to walk through it. The shelter smelled like industrial cleaner and coffee that had been sitting too long. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Women and children moved through the common areas with the careful posture of people who had learned to take up as little space as possible. Elise had volunteered here for 2 years, teaching financial literacy workshops and helping residents navigate bureaucratic systems. She had never expected to need those same systems herself. Carla Mendez found her in the break room, staring at a vending machine without seeing it. Elise? Carla was 29, with a scar above her left eyebrow that she never talked about. She had been at the shelter for 3 months and was finally preparing to move into her own apartment. You look different today. Not volunteer, different. Different. Elise tried to smile. Long week. Carla sat down across from her without waiting for an invitation. She had learned at the shelter that people in crisis needed company, not permission. You know what gave me away? Carla asked conversationally. When I finally decided to leave? It was not the hitting. It was not the cheating. It was not even when he threatened my mother. It was this one random Tuesday when he told me I had loaded the dishwasher wrong, and something in my brain just clicked. I thought, I have a master's degree in engineering, and I am being lectured about dish placement by a man who cannot find the washing machine without a map. Despite everything, Elise laughed. A real laugh. The first one in weeks. Carla smiled. There she is. So, you want to tell me what is going on? Or should I just keep talking until you crack? Elise looked at this woman she had been trying to help for months. Then she took a breath and let the truth spill out. She did not mention Kensington Holdings, or secret identities, or billion-dollar empires. But she told Carla about Daniel, about the party, the hospital, the debt, the forgery, about the way hope had turned into a trap. When she finished, Carla nodded slowly. So you are one of us now. I do not know what I am. Yes, you do. Carla leaned forward. You are a woman who just realized her life is not what she thought it was. That is scary as hell, but it is also the first step. You know what comes next? Elise shook her head. Planning. Carla's voice hardened with experience. Leaving is not one decision. It is 100 small decisions. You do not run when you are angry. You do not run when he is suspicious. You run when he thinks everything is fine. That is when you have the advantage. Over the next hour, Carla walked Elise through the steps she had learned from counselors and survivors and her own painful experience. Document everything. Screenshots of texts, photos of any injuries, copies of financial records. Store them somewhere he cannot access. Open a bank account in your name only. Move what you can without raising suspicion. Identify one person you trust completely. Tell them your plan. Give them copies of your documents. Pack an emergency bag and hide it. Important papers, cash, phone charger, medication, one change of clothes. Know where you will go before you leave. Shelter, family, friend. Have a backup plan for your backup plan. Elise listened, memorizing every word. She thought about her basement office, her secure servers, her team of lawyers who did not even know she was married to an abuser. She thought about the resources she had been hiding from everyone, including herself. There's one more thing. Carla hesitated. The money he owes, the people he owes it to, that changes things. I know, those are not people who follow restraining orders. Those are not people who care about court dates. If they think you have money, any money, they might come after you directly. I know, Elise repeated. That is why I need to move carefully. Carla studied her face. You have more resources than you are telling me, do you not? Elise did not answer. Good. Carla stood. Use them. Whatever you have, use all of it. This is not the time to be modest or fair or to worry about what people will think. This is the time to survive. That night, Elise made a phone call she had been avoiding for 4 years. Marcus Webb answered his private line on the first ring, even though it was 11:30 at night. His voice was sharp and alert, accustomed to crisis calls from clients whose problems could not wait for business hours. Miss Kensington, I was wondering when I would hear from you, Marcus. She steadied her voice. I need to tell you something about my personal situation, and then I need your help. She talked for 45 minutes. When she finished, Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I have been waiting years for you to wake up about this man. Tell me exactly what you want to do, and I will make it happen. They talked until 3 in the morning, building a strategy piece by piece. Over the following weeks, Elise executed her plan with the same precision she brought to corporate acquisitions. She photographed every document in Daniel's files. She screenshotted every suspicious text she could access. She recorded conversations when she could do so legally, taking careful note of North Carolina's one-party consent laws. She transferred personal funds into a new account Daniel did not know existed. She made copies of their marriage certificate, the forged loan documents, the threatening letters from collection agencies. She found James Tucker, the security guard from the party. He had held on to his body camera footage, waiting to see if she would ever need it. He gave her a copy without hesitation. Ma'am, he said, handing her the USB drive, I have seen a lot of men like your husband. They are real good at looking sorry. I held on to this because I had a feeling you might need it someday. She told Vivian everything. The assistant listened without interrupting, and when Elise finished, Vivian said simply, Finally, now let us destroy him. She even reached out to Megan Shaw. That conversation was the hardest. Elise sat across from her husband's mistress in a quiet coffee shop, watching Megan's face cycle through defiance, guilt, and finally, something like recognition. He told you he was leaving me, did he not? Elise asked. Megan nodded slowly. 6 months ago. He said you were cold and distant, and the marriage was basically over. He told me he was working late. Every night he spent with you, he told me he was working late. Megan's composure cracked slightly. I did not know about the baby. Neither did he, until the party. When I tried to show him the sonogram, he slapped it out of my hand. Then he pushed me down in front of everyone. Megan stared at her coffee, silent. I am not here to fight with you. Elise kept her voice steady. I am here because I think we have both been lied to, and I think you might have information that could help me get out safely. The conversation lasted 2 hours. By the end, Megan had agreed to provide text messages and emails that documented Daniel's financial schemes. Conversations where he had bragged about skimming money from Meridian Dynamics, plans he had shared for how to hide assets from his boring wife. She had also shared something else. A video Daniel had sent her from the night of the party, filmed on his phone in the hotel elevator, showing him celebrating his successful performance as the concerned husband while his wife bled in the emergency room. The footage showed him laughing about how easy Elise was to manipulate. Elise watched the video once, saved it to her secure server, and added it to her collection of evidence. The cage was almost open now. She just needed one more piece. Daniel came home drunk on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks into Elise's secret preparations, not sloppy drunk, cold drunk. The kind of intoxication that sharpened his cruelty rather than blunting it. She was in the kitchen when she heard his car in the driveway. By the time he walked through the door, she had her phone hidden in her robe pocket, recording app running silently. We need to talk. His voice was flat, controlled. Elise's heart rate spiked, but she kept her face calm. What is wrong? Daniel dropped into a chair and stared at her with eyes she did not recognize. I had an interesting conversation tonight. Guy named Marco. Works for the people I owe money to. Elisa's blood went cold. They are getting impatient, Daniel continued. They mentioned knowing where we live, where you volunteer, that cute little shelter you spend so much time at. She forced her voice to stay steady. I told you I cannot access the trust fund quickly. The lawyers control everything. Do not lie to me. Daniel stood suddenly, and Elise flinched before she could stop herself. I tracked your car today. You went to a lawyer's office. Then you went to a coffee shop where you spent 2 hours with someone. Then you went to a bank that is not our bank. He had been following her. For how long? How much did he know? Daniel. She raised her hands slowly. Whatever you think is happening, I think you are planning to leave me. His voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than shouting. I think you have been sneaking around behind my back, moving money, talking to people you should not be talking to. After everything I have done for you, everything you have done for me. Something snapped in Elise's carefully maintained composure. You forged my signature on loans. You have been gambling away our savings. You pushed me down at your promotion party while I was pregnant with your child. Our child? Daniel laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. How do I even know it is mine? You have been sneaking around for weeks. Secret phones, secret lawyers. Maybe this baby is as fake as everything else about you. Elise felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not anymore. Something colder, something stronger. 4 years, she said quietly. 4 years I cooked your meals and supported your career and made myself small so you could feel big. 4 years I hid who I really was because I wanted to be loved for myself, not for my money. I thought that would protect me. I thought love would protect both of us. Daniel's expression flickered with confusion. But you never loved me, did you? She continued, her voice gaining strength. I was just convenient. Someone to manage your house while you chased promotions. Someone to blame when things went wrong. Someone to use. You do not know what you are talking about. I know exactly what I am talking about. And then Elise said words she had never planned to say. Words that spilled out of some reservoir of fury she had been filling for years without knowing it. My name is not Elise Hartwell. My legal name is Elise Marie Kensington. I am the majority shareholder and CEO of Kensington Holdings. Your company, Meridian Dynamics, is one of my subsidiaries. I own your office. I own your parking space. I approved your promotion through a signature you probably saw 100 times and never bothered to question. Daniel stared at her. Then he laughed again. Okay, crazy. Sure, you are a secret billionaire, and I am the Pope. E.M. Kensington. Elise pulled out her phone and showed him a Forbes article. Check LinkedIn. Check the board of directors page. Check the signature on the memo that announced your precious vice director position. Then check yourself into a hotel because you are not spending another night in my house. Daniel grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to warn. If you think you can just... The doorbell rang. Daniel froze. Elise did not move. The bell rang again, followed by a firm knock. Charlotte Police, please open the door. Daniel released her wrist like it had burned him. His face went pale. What did you do? Elise walked to the door and opened it. Standing on her porch was Detective Sandra Coleman, a domestic violence specialist Elise had met through her volunteer work. Mrs. Kensington. Detective Coleman's voice was professional but kind. We received your documentation package this afternoon. Based on the evidence of assault, financial fraud, and ongoing threats, we are prepared to execute an emergency protective order. Is your husband here? Daniel appeared behind Elise, his charm already sliding into place. Officers, I do not know what my wife has told you, But this is clearly a misunderstanding. She has been under a lot of stress with the pregnancy and... Sir, Detective Coleman cut him off. We have body camera footage from the incident 3 weeks ago. We have documented evidence of signature forgery on multiple loan applications. We have recordings of threats made within the last hour. This is not a conversation. This is a notification. She handed Daniel a folded document. You are required to maintain a distance of 1,000 feet from Mrs. Kensington and this residence. You have 15 minutes to collect essential belongings under officer supervision. A full court hearing will be scheduled within 10 days. Daniel's face cycled through disbelief, rage, calculation, and finally something like fear. He looked at Elise with eyes she had never seen before. You have no idea what you have just started. No. She met his gaze without flinching. You have no idea what I have just finished. As officers escorted Daniel to gather his things, Detective Coleman touched Elise's arm gently. You did the right thing. This is not over, but you took the hardest step. Elise nodded, watching her husband carry a hastily packed bag to his car under police supervision. The cage door was finally open. Now she just had to survive what came next. 3 days of fragile peace shattered with a single phone call. Elise was in her home office, finally able to work openly without hiding from Daniel, when Marcus Webb's number flashed on her screen. We have a problem, his voice was grim. What kind of problem? Daniel has retained Lawrence Foster. The name hit Elise like a punch. Lawrence Foster was the most aggressive divorce attorney in North Carolina, known for scorched earth tactics and a specialty in asset warfare. It gets worse. Marcus continued. Foster has filed a counterpetition claiming that you fraudulently concealed assets throughout the marriage. He is arguing that by hiding your identity as E.M. Kensington, you deceived Daniel into marriage under false pretenses. He is seeking a substantial portion of Kensington Holdings as compensation for emotional distress. Elise's hand tightened on the phone. That is insane. The prenuptial agreement specifically. The prenuptial agreement may be challenged on grounds of fraudulent inducement. Foster is arguing that Daniel could not have given informed consent to marital terms when you were actively deceiving him about who you really were. The room spun. Elise sat down heavily. There is more. Marcus's voice was almost gentle now. Foster has also filed for presumptive parental rights. He is arguing that since the child was conceived during the marriage, Daniel has automatic standing to seek joint custody regardless of any protective orders regarding domestic violence. He assaulted me while I was pregnant. I know, and that will matter in the long run. But in the short term, Foster is spinning a narrative. He is positioning Daniel as a loving father who is blindsided by a wife who lied about everything. The assault becomes a moment of understandable anger upon discovering the deception. The gambling debt becomes evidence that Daniel was under tremendous pressure while his wife hoarded secret billions. That is not what happened. The truth does not always win in family court, Elise. Narrative wins, resources win. Whoever can maintain the fight longest wins. And right now, Foster is being paid by someone with deep pockets. Who is funding Daniel's legal fees? Marcus hesitated. We believe it is connected to his gambling creditors. They may see this lawsuit as an investment. If Daniel can secure a significant settlement from you, they recover their money. If the case drags on long enough, they can use the ongoing litigation as leverage. Elise closed her eyes. So I am being sued by my abusive husband, funded by criminals, using my own secret identity as a weapon against me. That is an accurate summary. For a long moment, Elise sat in silence. She thought about her father, who had built Kensington Holdings from a small manufacturing firm into a global empire. She thought about her mother, who had managed the family foundation while raising two daughters and battling cancer with quiet dignity. She thought about the baby growing inside her, the heartbeat she had heard in that hospital room, the future she had promised to protect. Then she straightened her spine and picked up the phone. Schedule an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning. Full attendance. Emisa, I have spent 4 years hiding who I am. I have spent 4 years letting other people control narratives about me. That ends now. What are you going to do? I am going to tell them everything. The marriage, the assault, the lawsuit. I am going to ask them to stand with me publicly. And then I am going to give Daniel Hartwell the fight of his life. The board meeting convened at 8 the next morning, 12 faces around a polished table, representing decades of corporate experience and billions in shareholder value. James Morrison, who had been quietly positioning himself to take Elise's seat, sat near the end with barely concealed anticipation. Elise stood at the head of the table, projecting an image she had never allowed these people to see before. Not E.M. Kensington, the mysterious signature on documents. Not the grieving daughter trying to honor her father's legacy. Just Elise, complete and unafraid. Thank you for gathering on short notice. I have a personal matter to share that will become public soon, and I want you to hear it from me first. She told them everything. The marriage she had kept secret to protect herself. The abuse that had escalated over 4 years. The assault that had nearly cost her baby's life. The lawsuit designed to steal pieces of the company she had built. When she finished, the room was silent. James Morrison leaned forward, his voice dripping with false concern. This is certainly a difficult personal situation, and we all sympathize. But I have to ask whether these revelations raise questions about judgment, about fitness to lead. Elise met his eyes without flinching. You are asking whether surviving domestic violence makes me unfit to run a Fortune 500 company. I am asking whether the choices you made, hiding your identity, staying in an abusive marriage, might indicate issues with decision-making that could affect shareholder value. 1 in 4 women in America will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Elise's voice was steady. If surviving abuse disqualifies someone from leadership, you would have to eliminate a significant portion of the workforce, including, I suspect, some people in this room. A woman at the far end of the table, Margaret Chen, the longest-serving board member, looked up sharply. Elise held her gaze for a moment. Something unspoken passed between them. The question before this board is not whether I made perfect choices in my personal life, Elise continued. The question is whether I can lead this company through the challenges ahead. And my answer is this. She pressed a button, and screens around the room lit up with charts and figures. Under my leadership, over the past 7 years, Kensington Holdings has increased revenue by 340%. We have expanded into 12 new markets. We have created over 40,000 jobs. We have maintained ethical standards that have earned us recognition from every major sustainability index. She advanced to the next slide. The lawsuit Daniel has filed is designed to destabilize this company by destabilizing me. If we show weakness, if we allow ourselves to be extorted by an abuser and his criminal associates, we invite future attacks. Every predator who thinks they can manipulate their way into Kensington resources will see us as a target. She looked around the room, meeting each face in turn. I am asking you to stand with me, not out of sympathy, out of strength. Because the values that built this company, integrity, resilience, protecting those who cannot protect themselves, those values mean nothing if we abandon them when they become inconvenient. Margaret Chen spoke first. I move that the board issue a public statement of support for our CEO and authorize whatever resources are necessary to address the legal situation. I counsel, another voice from across the table. James Morrison's face reddened. This is highly irregular. We should table this for further discussion. Call the vote. Margaret cut him off. All in favor. 11 hands rose. Morrison sat alone with his arm at his side. The motion carries. Margaret smiled at Elise. Now, tell us what you need. The Meridian Dynamics boardroom felt different when Elise entered it 2 weeks later. Smaller, less intimidating, just a room with a long table and nervous executives who had only just learned that the wife of their disgraced colleague was also the owner of their company. Daniel sat at the far end, flanked by Lawrence Foster. His face showed the strain of recent weeks. The expensive watch was gone, probably pawned. His suit was wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. For a moment, Elise felt an echo of the love she had once believed in. Then she remembered the ballroom floor, the hospital room, the sound of him laughing in that elevator video. The echo faded. Thank you all for attending. She took her seat at the head of the table. This meeting concerns personnel matters at Meridian Dynamics and related legal issues affecting Kensington Holdings. Lawrence Foster stood immediately. I object to my client being summoned to a corporate meeting when there is ongoing litigation between parties. This is clearly an attempt at intimidation. Your objection is noted. Marcus Webb did not look up from his documents. However, Mr. Hartwell's presence is not as a party to litigation. It is as a current employee of Meridian Dynamics facing termination proceedings. The matters are legally distinct. Foster opened his mouth to argue, but Daniel placed a hand on his arm. It is fine, Lawrence. Let her have her little show. Elise ignored him. She nodded to the legal team, and screens around the room came to life. The first slide showed financial records. These documents demonstrate a pattern of embezzlement from Meridian Dynamics corporate accounts totaling $287,000 over 4 years. Expenses were disguised as client entertainment, strategic consulting, and business development. Forensic accounting has traced these funds to personal accounts belonging to Daniel Hartwell. Daniel's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. The second slide displayed email exchanges. These communications show Mr. Hartwell sharing confidential Meridian project proposals with representatives of a competitor firm. In exchange for this proprietary information, he received payments deposited into an offshore account. This is outrageous. Foster stood again. These documents were obtained illegally. They were obtained through a routine internal audit triggered by anomalies in expense reporting. Marcus's voice was calm. An audit that Mrs. Kensington, as majority shareholder, had standing to request. The third slide showed the body camera footage from the promotion party. This video documents Mr. Hartwell assaulting his pregnant wife at a company event. The assault resulted in hospitalization and threatened the pregnancy. The room watched in silence as Daniel grabbed Elise's arm as he slapped the sonogram from her hand as he shoved her to the floor. When the video ended, Elise spoke again. Kensington Holdings takes workplace safety seriously. We have zero tolerance for violence, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Based on the evidence presented, Daniel Hartwell's employment is terminated immediately for cause. You cannot do this, Daniel's voice cracked. I have rights. I will sue for wrongful termination. You may pursue whatever legal remedies you feel are appropriate. Elise met his eyes, just as I am pursuing mine. She nodded to Marcus, who stood and addressed the room. The evidence of embezzlement and corporate espionage has been forwarded to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. A criminal investigation is now underway. Additionally, evidence of signature forgery on loan documents has been provided to the Charlotte District Attorney. Mr. Hartwell is facing multiple felony charges independent of any civil litigation. Daniel's face went gray. Lawrence, do something. Foster shuffled papers. clearly calculating whether this case was still worth his time. The criminal exposure changes the landscape significantly. We need to discuss options privately. One more item. Elise raised her hand. Mr. Hartwell has previously expressed a extent concern about debts owed to certain parties outside traditional financial institutions. Kensington Holdings has no relationship with these parties and will provide no resources to satisfy these obligations. Any representations Mr. Hartwell may have made about access to my personal or corporate assets were fraudulent. I have instructed our security team to share this information directly with the relevant parties. Daniel's gray face went white. You cannot. They will deal with you as they see fit. Elise stood. I am simply clarifying that I am not part of whatever arrangement you made with them. You borrowed money you could not repay. You made promises you could not keep. Those are your choices. These are your consequences. She gathered her documents and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. Daniel. She did not turn around. For 4 years, you told me I was nothing without you, that I did not belong in your world, that I should be grateful you kept me around. She looked back over her shoulder. You were right about one thing. I did not belong in your world. Your world was small and cruel and built on lies. My world, the one I built while you were too busy cheating and gambling and stealing to notice, my world has no room for people like you. The door closed behind her. In the hallway, her hands started shaking. Vivian was waiting with a cup of tea and a look of fierce pride. That was magnificent. Elise took a breath. It is not over yet. No, but the hard part is done. The rest is just process. They walked together toward the elevator. Behind them, raised voices echoed from the boardroom as Daniel's remaining support structure collapsed. Elise pressed the button for the lobby. In the polished metal of the elevator doors, she caught her reflection. She looked tired. She looked strong. She looked like someone who had walked through fire and was still standing. Her hand moved to her stomach, where the baby kicked gently against her palm. We are going to be okay, she whispered. Both of us. The elevator doors opened. She stepped into her future. 6 weeks later, Elise walked into the Charlotte family courthouse with her head high and her heart pounding. The hallway smelled like floor wax and anxiety. Families clustered on benches, some crying, some arguing in whispers, some staring at phones to avoid looking at each other. Lawyers in dark suits moved purposefully between courtrooms, carrying futures in their briefcases. Grace held Elise's hand as they found seats outside courtroom D. Her sister had flown in from Boston 3 days ago and refused to leave. You do not have to do this alone, Grace had said. You never did. I just wish you had told me sooner. Now, waiting for the bailiff to call their case, Elise tried to steady her breathing. Her belly was prominent now, 7 months along. The baby seemed to sense her nerves, shifting restlessly. Marcus appeared from a side corridor. His expression was carefully neutral, the face of a lawyer who did not want to set expectations. They are ready for us. Foster has asked for a last-minute conference with the judge. Standard delay tactic. What does that mean? It means they are looking for an exit. Criminal charges have a way of clarifying priorities. The past weeks had been brutal. The FBI investigation had expanded. Daniel's passport had been seized. His gambling creditors had apparently decided he was more liability than asset and had begun distancing themselves publicly, though rumors suggested private conversations had been less pleasant. Lawrence Foster had been trying to negotiate a settlement that would make the whole thing disappear. Elise had refused every offer. I do not want his money, she had told Marcus. I want him to face consequences. Real consequences. Not a quiet agreement and a non-disclosure clause. That is rare in situations like this. I do not care what is normal. I care what is right. Now, standing outside the courtroom where a judge would decide custody and finalize divorce proceedings, Elise wondered if right was even possible in a system designed for compromise. The bailiff opened the door. Kensington versus Hartwell. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, an American flag standing beside the judge's bench. Nothing like the dramatic chambers she had seen in movies. Daniel was already seated at the respondent's table. He looked diminished, somehow. Thinner, older. The confident man who had once made her feel lucky to be chosen had been replaced by someone who flinched when doors opened too quickly. For a moment their eyes met. Elise saw many things in his gaze: resentment, calculation, a flicker of something that might have been regret. But not remorse, never remorse. She looked away. Judge Patricia Williams entered, and everyone rose. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back severely. Her reputation was for fairness and impatience, a combination that favored well-prepared parties. Be seated. She shuffled papers. This is a final hearing on dissolution of marriage and related custody matters. I have reviewed all submitted documentation, including video evidence, financial records, and expert testimony. She looked up. Mr. Foster, I understand you wish to address the court before we proceed. Foster stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. My client has authorized me to communicate a revised position. Given recent developments, Mr. Hartwell is prepared to accept the terms originally proposed by the petitioner. Full dissolution with no claim to marital assets, supervised visitation, contingent on completion of intervention programs, and no contest to the permanent protective order. The courtroom went silent. Elise stared at Daniel's back. After months of fighting, of threats and countersuits, and expensive legal warfare, he was giving up. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt hollow. Judge Williams turned to Marcus. Is this acceptable to the petitioner? Marcus glanced at Elise. She nodded slowly. It is, Your Honor. Very well. The judge made notes. However, before I finalize these proceedings, I want to make a statement for the record. She removed her glasses and looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Hartwell, I have presided over family court for 28 years. I have seen every kind of case imaginable. Couples who genuinely grew apart, parents fighting for children they both love, situations with fault on multiple sides. Her voice hardened. This is not one of those situations. The evidence before me shows a pattern of deliberate cruelty, financial exploitation, and physical violence against a pregnant woman. The only reason this hearing is ending peacefully is because your criminal exposure has made continued litigation strategically unwise. Daniel's lawyer put a restraining hand on his arm. I want you to understand something, Judge Williams continued. The woman you abused built an empire while you were too busy lying and stealing to notice. She could have destroyed you quietly. Instead, she chose to face you in open court, to document everything, to create a record that will follow you forever. She put her glasses back on. That took more courage than anything you have done in your entire life. I hope, for the sake of any future you might have, that you learn something from it. The gavel came down. This marriage is dissolved. The protective order is made permanent. Custody and visitation terms are as stipulated. Mr. Hartwell, you will have no contact with the petitioner except through supervised channels regarding the child. Violation of any term will result in immediate arrest. She gathered her papers. We are adjourned. The courtroom began to empty. Elise sat frozen in her chair, unable to process that it was actually over. Grace hugged her tightly. You did it. You are free. But Elise watched Daniel shuffle toward the exit, flanked by his lawyer. At the door, he paused and looked back. His eyes were empty. The charm was gone, burned away by consequences he had never imagined. He opened his mouth as if to speak. Then he shook his head and walked out. Elise would never see him in person again. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. News of the secret billionaire who had survived domestic violence had captured public imagination in ways that made Elise deeply uncomfortable. Mrs. Kensington, what message do you have for other women in similar situations? She looked at the faces waiting for wisdom, for inspiration, for something that would make sense of senseless cruelty. You are not trapped. Her voice was stronger than she felt. Even when it feels like there is no way out, there is. Start with one small step. Tell one person. Document one incident. You do not have to be a billionaire to protect yourself. The resources exist. Shelters, hotlines, legal aid, people who want to help. Use them. She paused. And remember, the person who hurt you wants you to believe you are powerless. That is the lie that keeps you trapped. Do not give them that satisfaction. You are stronger than you know. Marcus guided her toward the waiting car. The cameras kept flashing. Questions continued to rain down, but Elise was already somewhere else, thinking about cribs and baby names and the future she had almost lost, thinking about how close she had come to disappearing entirely, thinking about all the women who would not see their story on the news, who would not have lawyers and resources and board members voting to support them. She had work to do. The Kensington Foundation for Family Safety launched on a Tuesday morning 3 months after the divorce was finalized. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of the converted warehouse that would serve as headquarters. Fresh paint smell mingled with coffee from the catering table. Journalists and supporters milled around displays showing the Foundation's mission and programs. Elise stood at the podium, her daughter Emma sleeping peacefully in a carrier against her chest. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, born healthy despite everything. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and her mother's stubborn chin. Thank you all for being here. Elise's voice was clear and strong. 13 months ago, I lay on a ballroom floor while my husband stood over me and told me I had ruined everything. I was pregnant, terrified, and completely alone in a room full of people. The audience was silent. I survived because I had resources most women do not have. Money, lawyers, a support system I could eventually activate. But survival should not depend on wealth. Safety should not be a luxury item. Every person deserves the chance to escape abuse and build a new life. She gestured to the displays around the room. The Kensington Foundation will provide comprehensive support for domestic violence survivors, emergency housing, legal aid, job training, child care assistance, and long-term mental health services. We are partnering with existing shelters and advocacy organizations to expand capacity and reduce barriers. Our goal is not to replace the incredible work already being done, but to amplify it. Emma stirred against her chest. Elise paused to adjust the carrier, and a murmur of warmth rippled through the crowd. I named my daughter Emma because it means whole, complete. For years, I was not whole. I hid parts of myself, diminished my strength, made myself small to fit into a life that was slowly destroying me. She looked down at her sleeping child. I want Emma to grow up in a world where women do not have to choose between safety and authenticity, where strength is celebrated rather than punished, where asking for help is seen as wisdom, not weakness. She raised her eyes to the crowd. I cannot change what happened to me, but I can change what happens next, for others and for my daughter. That is what this foundation represents. Not just survival, but transformation. Not just escape, but rebuilding, not just enduring, but thriving. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Elise worked the room with Emma still strapped to her chest. Donors wrote checks. Journalists asked questions. Advocates shared stories of the work they were doing and the funding gaps they faced. Carla Mendez appeared at her elbow, looking professional and confident in a way that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Carla had been one of their foundation's first hires, bringing her engineering background to bear on logistics and program design. The housing partnership just confirmed. She kept her voice low. 300 new beds across 12 facilities, fully funded for 5 years. Elise squeezed her hand. Thank you for everything. You gave me a chance when I needed one. Carla smiled. Just paying it forward. Vivian materialized from somewhere with a list of names and talking points. The governor's wife wants a photo. The mayor has questions about the tax implications of the real estate donation. And your sister is threatening to steal Emma if you do not take a break in the next 15 minutes. I do not need a break. Vivian gave her a look that had been perfected over 3 decades of managing Kensington executives. Take the break. The foundation will survive 15 minutes without you. So will the company. So will the world. Elise laughed, the first genuine laugh she had allowed herself all day. Fine. But only because Grace will actually steal my baby. She found her sister in a quiet corner, holding 2 cups of tea and wearing an expression of fierce pride. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Same thing sometimes. They sat together in comfortable silence. Emma woke up and made small noises that were not quite crying. Elise fed her, while Grace maintained a protective barrier against well-wishers who might interrupt. Mom and Dad would be proud, Grace said quietly, not just of the foundation, of everything. The way you handled Daniel, the way you protected Emma, the way you turned something terrible into something meaningful. Elise felt tears prick her eyes. I wish they could have met her. They are watching. Grace touched Emma's tiny fist, I am sure of it. After the reception, Elise retreated to her office on the top floor of Kensington Holdings headquarters. The view stretched across Charlotte's skyline, buildings her family's company had helped construct, communities their investments had shaped, futures their choices had influenced. Emma slept in a portable crib in the corner, while Elise reviewed documents that could not wait, even on Foundation launch day. The Singapore deal was finally closing. The Morrison situation had been resolved, with James accepting a generous severance package and a non-compete clause. Quarterly earnings exceeded projections by 12%. Normal work, important work. The kind of work that had once felt like hiding. Now it felt like building. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Heard about your foundation. You think you are safe now. You think it is over. You are wrong. Elise stared at the message. Her heart rate spiked, the old fear response that might never fully fade. Then she took a screenshot, forwarded it to Detective Coleman and Marcus Webb, and blocked the number. She picked up Emma and held her close, breathing in the baby powder scent, feeling the tiny heartbeat against her chest. Whatever came next, she would face it. Not alone, never again alone, but not afraid either. 1 year later, Elise stood at the window of her new home, watching Emma take her first wobbling steps across the living room carpet. Come on, sweet girl. Grace crouched a few feet away, arms outstretched. You can do it. Emma's face was a mask of concentration. 1 step, 2 steps. A wobble that nearly ended in disaster, then 3 steps, 4 steps, and a triumphant collapse into her aunt's arms. The room erupted in applause. Vivian, who had sworn she was only stopping by to drop off documents, wiped her eyes and pretended she had allergies. Carla captured the moment on video. Even Marcus Webb, present for a contract signing, allowed himself a small smile. She is going to be a force of nature. Grace lifted Emma high, just like her mother. Elise watched her daughter giggle and kick her legs, and something in her chest expanded until she thought it might burst. This was the life she had dreamed of, not the fantasy she had constructed with Daniel, built on lies and hope that had no foundation, but this real, messy, complicated, beautiful life, full of people who knew exactly who she was and loved her anyway. The past year had not been easy. Criminal proceedings against Daniel had resulted in a plea deal, 3 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. The gambling creditors had been dealt with through channels. Elise did not ask Marcus to explain. Threatening messages had appeared occasionally, then stopped entirely after one sender was traced and prosecuted. She still had nightmares sometimes. She still flinched when men raised their voices unexpectedly. She still had moments when she wondered if she deserved any of the good things that had come her way. But those moments were fewer now, and she had learned to let them pass without believing them. The Kensington Foundation had helped over 2,000 families in its first year. The matching program Elise had championed, pairing survivors with mentors who had walked similar paths, had become a model. Other organizations were replicating. Carla was now running daily operations, turning her engineering mind toward the problem of scaling compassion. Elise still worked, still signed documents and attended board meetings and made decisions that affected thousands of employees, but she had learned to delegate, to trust, to recognize that her worth was not measured in hours at a desk or deals closed. She had learned, slowly and painfully, to let herself be happy. The doorbell rang. Elise answered it to find James Tucker standing on her porch, wearing civilian clothes and holding a gift bag. "Mr. Tucker." She smiled warmly. "This is a surprise. I heard it was the little one's birthday soon." He shifted awkwardly. "Wanted to drop something off?" Tucker had retired from security work 6 months after the trial. The attention from the case had made him uncomfortable, but he had stayed in touch with Elise through occasional emails and cards. "Please come in." She led him to the living room, where Emma was now attempting to eat a block while Grace tried to redirect her attention. Tucker watched the scene with a soft expression. "She looks like you. Poor kid." Elise laughed. Tucker pulled a small stuffed elephant from the gift bag. "This probably seems silly. My granddaughter had one like it when she was little. She is in college now. Time goes fast. It is not silly at all." Elise took the elephant and handed it to Emma, who immediately began gnawing on its trunk. "It is perfect, thank you." Tucker nodded, clearly ready to leave, but lingering anyway. "There is something I wanted to tell you, something I should have said at the trial." Elise waited. That night at the party, when I saw what was happening, I almost did not turn on the camera. He looked at the floor. "I have worked events like that for 20 years. I have seen things. Usually I just write a report and move on. Not my business what rich people do to each other." His voice roughened. "But something about you, the way you fell, the way you curled up to protect your baby, made me think of my daughter, what I would want someone to do if she was in that situation." He met her eyes. "I am glad I turned it on. I am glad you got out. And I am glad I got to see this." He gestured at the warm living room, the laughing family, the happy baby. "This is what that night was for. So you could have this." Elise felt tears streaming down her face. She did not try to stop them. "Thank you, James." She hugged him, surprising them both, for seeing me when I could not see myself, for caring when no one else did. "You helped save my life, both our lives." Tucker patted her back awkwardly, then extricated himself with the embarrassed grace of a man unused to emotion. After he left, Elise sat on the floor next to Emma and watched her daughter chew enthusiastically on her new elephant. Grace settled beside her. "You okay?" "Better than okay." Elise leaned her head on her sister's shoulder. "I was just thinking about what Dad used to say, about how power means nothing if you cannot protect the ones you love. I remember, for a long time, I thought that meant keeping secrets, hiding who I was, making myself small so no one could use my power against me. And now? Now I think it means something different." She picked Emma up and held her close. "I think it means being strong enough to be vulnerable, brave enough to ask for help, willing to let people see the real you, even when it is terrifying. That is how you protect the ones you love. By being whole, by being present, by being honest about who you are and what you need." Emma grabbed a handful of Elise's hair and tugged experimentally. "Ow!" Elise laughed through her tears. "Also by keeping your hair in a ponytail around grabby babies." She stood and carried Emma to the window. The sun was setting over Charlotte, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in that city, women were making the hardest decision of their lives. Picking up phones, packing secret bags, taking the first terrifying step toward freedom. And somewhere, the Kensington Foundation was answering calls, opening doors, saying the words that changed everything. "You are not alone. We believe you. There is a way out." Elise pressed a kiss to Emma's forehead. "We are going to be okay." She whispered it like a prayer, a promise, a truth she had finally learned to believe. Both of us. All of us. The last light of the sun caught her face through the window. She looked tired. She looked strong. She looked like someone who had walked through fire and emerged, not unscathed, but unbroken. Emma waved the stuffed elephant at the sunset, babbling happily. And Elise Marie Kensington, secret billionaire, domestic violence survivor, mother, sister, friend, and finally, fully herself, smiled at her daughter and stepped into the next chapter of a life she had fought for, earned, and would never stop protecting. "This is only the beginning," she said, and for the first time, in longer than she could remember, that thought filled her with joy instead of fear. Before we begin, I have a small request. If you believe that women who survive abuse deserve to have their stories told, hit that subscribe button right now. If you believe that strength is not about how loud you fight, but about how smart you plan, tap the like button. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they are not alone, that escape is possible, that their story is not over, share this video with them. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from tonight. I read every single one. Now, let us begin. Ioro, thank you for staying until the end. This story carries a message I hope you will remember. The person who hurts you wants you to believe you are powerless. That is the lie that keeps you trapped. But you are stronger than you know, and asking for help is not weakness. It is wisdom. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or reminded you of your own strength, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story that matters. And remember, every ending is also a beginning. Final credit line. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our viewers. Thank you for being part of this journey.